I used to think I had life all figured out. My name is Amber, and at 32, I was a senior project manager at Pinnacle Solutions, a tech firm in downtown Seattle where glass walls reflected ambition and the hum of overpriced coffee machines filled the break room. My life looked like a curated Instagram feed, a cozy apartment with fairy lights twinkling on the balcony, a fiancé named Ryan whose laughter could light up the darkest days, and a best friend, Claire, who'd been my rock since our college years. But beneath the glossy surface, cracks were forming, cracks I didn't see until they shattered everything I'd built. Ryan and I had been together for 5 years, engaged for 1. He was a graphic designer, all messy hair and effortless charm, the kind of guy who'd sketch doodles on napkins and leave them by my coffee mug with a wink. We'd planned our wedding for next summer, a small affair by Lake Washington with peonies and a string quartet, the kind of day I'd dreamed about since I was a kid. I trusted him completely, poured every piece of my heart into him, which is why the betrayal hit like a freight train, tearing through my world with merciless precision. It was a rainy Tuesday in October 2024. I'd left work early, my hair damp from Seattle's relentless drizzle, my laptop bag heavy on my shoulder. Ryan thought I'd be stuck in a late meeting, so he wasn't expecting me. I walked into our apartment and found him on the couch, tangled with Claire, my best friend since we were 19. Who'd cried with me through heartbreaks and cheered every promotion. They were laughing, her hand resting on his chest, his fingers weaving through her hair. The scene was so intimate it felt like I was trespassing in my own life. Her jasmine perfume, a scent I'd always loved, hung in the air like a traitor's signature, twisting the knife deeper. I stood frozen in the doorway, my keys dangling, rain dripping from my coat onto the hardwood floor. My stomach churned, and my vision blurred, not from tears. Not yet, but from the sheer unreality of it. My heart pounded in my ears, a deafening rhythm that drowned out their laughter. Ryan? My voice cracked, barely audible. They sprang apart, faces flushed, guilt etched in their wide eyes. Claire stammered, "Amber, it's not," but I cut her off with a single word, "Don't." My laptop bag hit the floor with a thud, and I turned, walking back into the rain, the cold soaking through my clothes as I wandered the slick streets. My phone buzzed with their texts, Ryan's frantic apologies, Claire's desperate excuses, but I silenced it, shoving it deep into my pocket. The world felt like it was collapsing, and I was too numb to care. That night, I checked into a hotel, a sterile box with beige walls and a faint hum of anonymity. I lay on the stiff bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 5 years. Every time Claire had gushed about my engagement ring, her eyes sparkling as she called it perfect. Every time Ryan had kissed me goodnight, whispering, "You're my home." Had it all been a lie? The pain was a living thing, clawing at my chest, a raw, aching wound that pulsed with every heartbeat. I wondered how long they'd been sneaking around, how many of our shared moments were tainted by their secret. The betrayal wasn't just a moment, it was a theft of my past, rewriting memories I'd cherished. I sat up, my hands trembling, and opened my laptop, scrolling through old photos. There we were, Ryan, Claire, and me, at a music festival last summer. Sunburned and laughing, our arms slung around each other. I deleted them all, my thumb moving mechanically, erasing years of love and friendship in a few swipes. It didn't heal me, but it felt like a purge, a way to reclaim space in my heart. But the anger wasn't enough to drown the doubt. Some nights, I'd lie awake, questioning myself. Had I been too trusting? Too naive? Had I missed signs because I was too busy chasing deadlines and promotions? The guilt gnawed at me, whispering that I'd invited this pain by being too open. Too vulnerable. I pushed back against it, reminding myself that trust wasn't a flaw, it was their betrayal that was the crime. Still, the questions lingered, a shadow I had to fight through to find my resolve. Work, my usual sanctuary, offered no escape. Pinnacle Solutions was a pressure cooker, a fortress of glass and steel where ambition battled under fluorescent lights. The open plan office, meant to foster collaboration, felt like a stage where every move was watched. Our CEO, Marcus Davenport, was the worst of it. To the world, he was a tech visionary, all polished suits and TED Talk charisma, his face plastered on industry magazines. But behind closed doors, he was a predator. I'd heard whispers for years, female employees who'd left suddenly, their NDAs signed in shaky handwriting, their careers quietly derailed. I'd brushed it off, too focused on climbing the corporate ladder to dig deeper. I'd convinced myself the rumors were exaggerated, that Pinnacle's toxic culture was just how things were in tech. But a week after catching Ryan and Claire, I saw Marcus's true colors up close, and the illusion shattered. I was in his office, presenting a timeline for a new app launch. The room was all glass and ego, with a view of the Seattle skyline that screamed power. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his eyes lingering on me in a way that made my skin crawl, like I was a puzzle he was entitled to solve. "Great work, Amber," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "But you seem tense. Dinner at my place this weekend? Just us. To unwind." His wedding ring glinted on his finger, a cruel reminder of his wife, who'd just had their second child. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the glass walls were closing in. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting into knots. "I'm good, thanks. Just focused on the project." He chuckled, a low, predatory sound, like my refusal was a cute game he'd win eventually. Later that day, I overheard him in the break room, making the same offer to Sarah, a junior developer who'd been at Pinnacle for 6 months. She laughed nervously, her eyes darting to the exit, fear flickering across her face. I recognized that look, it was the same one I'd buried in my own reflection. That night, I found an anonymous post on an X thread from a former employee, detailing Marcus's pattern: inappropriate advances, pressure to comply, retaliation if you didn't. The post was deleted within hours, but I'd screenshotted it, the words burning into my memory. Marcus wasn't just a sleaze, he was a bully, using his power to prey on women like Sarah. Like me, in a workplace that enabled him. The open plan desks, the collaborative culture, the HR department that answered to him. It was all a trap, designed to keep his victims silent. The double betrayal, Ryan and Claire's affair, Marcus's toxic abuse of power, broke something in me. I spent weeks in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. My apartment, once a sanctuary with its soft rugs and overflowing bookshelves, felt like a museum of a life I no longer recognized. Ryan's sketchbooks and hoodies mocked me from every corner, each one a reminder of his lies. Claire's texts stopped after I blocked her, but her betrayal lingered like a bruise, tender and discolored. At work, I dodged Marcus's invitations, keeping my head down, but his presence loomed, a constant reminder that nowhere was safe. The office's glass walls, once a symbol of transparency, now felt like a panopticon, his gaze inescapable. The lowest point came one night in November. I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a wool blanket, the city lights blurred by a heavy mist. The rain had paused, but the air was thick, pressing against my skin like a weight. I felt hollow, like I'd lost everything: my love, my best friend, my sense of security at work. The Amber who'd laughed easily, who'd believed in loyalty and happy endings, was gone. I traced the fairy lights with my eyes, their soft glow a cruel contrast to the darkness inside me. I wondered if I'd ever feel whole again, if the pieces of me could be stitched back together. The pain was a tidal wave, threatening to drown me. But as I sat there, the anger I'd felt that first night grew into a fire, a burning resolve that warmed me from within. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Sarah, about the other women Marcus had hurt, about the life I'd built being torn apart by lies. I wasn't going to let them win. That's when I decided to fight back, not with screams or fists, but with something sharper: strategy. I'd make Ryan and Claire face the consequences of their betrayal. I'd expose Marcus for what he was. And I'd do it all without breaking the law, without losing the parts of myself I still valued. This was my revenge, and it would be perfect. The planning became my lifeline, a way to channel the chaos in my heart into something precise and powerful. Late nights in my hotel room, I sat cross-legged on the bed, my laptop glowing, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scribbled notes. I'd always been good at strategy, mapping project timelines, anticipating risks, navigating office politics. Now, I turned those skills inward, crafting a plan as meticulous as any corporate rollout. But this wasn't just about execution, it was about survival. Every step I planned was a step toward reclaiming the Amber I'd lost, the one who'd trusted too easily but was learning to trust herself. The process wasn't without its toll. Some nights, doubt crept in, whispering that I was going too far, that revenge would taint me. I'd stare at my reflection in the hotel mirror, searching for the line between justice and vengeance. Was I becoming someone I wouldn't recognize? I countered those thoughts by writing in a journal, a habit I'd started to process the pain. I'd scribble questions: why did they do this? What did I miss? And answers: their choices aren't my fault. I deserve to fight back. The journal became my anchor, a place to sort through the anger and guilt, to remind myself that I wasn't just seeking revenge, I was seeking accountability. For Ryan, it started with the apartment. It was in my name, but he'd lived there rent-free, claiming his freelance gigs didn't cover much. I'd been too in love to care, paying the bills, stocking the fridge, while he coasted on charm and promises. Now, I saw it for what it was, him leeching off me while cheating with my best friend. I contacted my landlord and began the eviction process, a straightforward move under Washington state law, which required 20 days' notice for tenants without a lease. I researched every detail, consulting a free legal aid website to ensure the paperwork was flawless, even drafting a backup plan in case Ryan contested it. Serving him the papers myself was a moment of cold clarity. I knocked on the apartment door, papers in hand, my heart steady despite the ache. He opened the door, his hair still infuriatingly perfect. And his face fell when he saw the notice. "Amber, come on, we can work this out," he pleaded, standing in my living room, his voice laced with the charm I'd once fallen for. His sketchbooks were scattered on the coffee table, a reminder of the life we'd shared. "There's nothing to work out," I said, my voice like steel. "You have 20 days. Get your stuff and go." He tried to argue, his eyes searching mine for the Amber who'd once melted at his touch. But that Amber was gone. Over the next few days, he sent texts, left voicemails, even showed up at my hotel with coffee and apologies, his face a mask of desperation. I didn't engage. I kept a log of every interaction, every attempt he made to contact me, storing screenshots in a secure folder in case he tried to fight the eviction. On day 19, he moved out, his belongings stuffed into trash bags, his brother's pickup truck idling outside. I walked through the apartment afterward, noting the absence of his chaos, his scattered pencils, his half-finished mugs of tea. The space felt lighter, like it could breathe again. I hired a cleaning crew to scrub every surface, erasing the last traces of him. I kept one sketch, a small drawing of the Space Needle from our first date, not for sentiment but as a reminder, even the most beautiful things can hide lies. Claire was a different kind of challenge. Her betrayal cut deeper, not just because of Ryan, but because it shattered a friendship I'd thought was unbreakable. We'd met in a college literature class, bonding over Jane Austen and late-night diner runs, our laughter echoing over greasy fries. She'd been there when my mom got sick, holding my hand through hospital visits. She'd celebrated my engagement, gushing over my ring like it was her own. I'd believed her when she said we'd be friends forever. Now, I saw her for what she was, someone who'd smiled to my face while stealing pieces of my life. Her lifestyle blog was her pride, a pastel-hued facade of #girlboss vibes with a loyal following of thousands. She'd built a brand on authenticity, securing brand deals for yoga retreats and organic skincare. But I knew it was built on half-truths. Claire had always been sloppy with her finances, claiming deductions for business expenses like designer bags, spa days, and a trip to Cabo she'd posted about, a trip, I later learned through a mutual friend's slip, she'd taken with Ryan. I'd seen her tax documents once, when she'd asked me to proofread a form, her handwriting messy but her confidence unshakable. Now, I used that knowledge. I spent hours researching IRS guidelines, cross-referencing her blog posts with tax laws, ensuring my anonymous tip through their online fraud reporting system was detailed but untraceable, listing her questionable deductions with precision. I used a public library computer to submit the tip, covering my tracks to avoid any digital footprint. It wasn't malicious, it was justice. An audit would unravel her carefully curated life, her reputation crumbling under the scrutiny of her own lies. I imagined her scrolling through her blog's comments, seeing the whispers of doubt from her followers, and felt a quiet satisfaction, not joy, but closure. But Marcus was the real dragon. He was untouchable, or so he thought, his kingdom fortified by loyalists, NDAs, and a corporate culture that rewarded silence. Pinnacle's HR department was a joke, staffed by yes men who filed complaints in the shredder. Senior managers turned a blind eye, dazzled by Marcus's success and the stock options that kept them loyal. The open plan office, with its glass walls and collaborative vibe, was a stage for his power plays, his gaze a constant pressure. I needed something undeniable, something that would hit his reputation and wallet, the two things he valued most. I started by talking to Sarah, meeting her at a quiet coffee shop near Pike Place Market, where the smell of roasted beans and the hum of conversation gave us cover. She was nervous, her fingers tapping her mug as she showed me Marcus's texts, casual check-ins that turned suggestive. Winking emojis that crossed lines. "It's like he's testing me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the clatter of dishes. "If I say no, I'm worried he'll make my life hell." I recognized that fear. It was the same one I'd buried every time Marcus's eyes lingered too long. I told her about the X thread, the anonymous accounts, the stories piling up. "We can stop him," I said, my own anger fueling my resolve. "But we have to be smart." I promised to protect her, sharing tips on documenting everything, saving texts, noting dates, keeping a journal, to build her own defense if needed. The research was meticulous, almost obsessive. Late nights in my hotel room, I combed through X posts, LinkedIn profiles, and old emails, building a timeline of Marcus's behavior. I found patterns in the stories. He targeted new hires, charming them with mentorship offers, then pushing boundaries with late-night texts or private meetings. If they resisted, he'd freeze them out, reassign their projects, or push them to quit. I reached out to ex-employees through anonymous accounts, using encrypted messaging apps to offer a safe space to share. 3 agreed, their stories chilling, unwanted touches in meeting rooms, late-night calls with implied threats, promises of promotions that came with strings. I recorded everything, keeping their identities protected, my notes a growing arsenal. I cross-checked every detail, consulting a legal blog to ensure my actions stayed within the law, avoiding defamation or harassment claims. I even spoke to a pro bono lawyer through a women's advocacy group, confirming that publicizing anonymized evidence was protected speech. The breakthrough was an email Marcus sent me after a late meeting last year. "You're too pretty to be this stressed, Amber. Let me take you out to unwind." I'd ignored it, buried it in a work folder, never thinking I'd need it. Now, it was evidence, subtle but damning in context. I cross-referenced it with Sarah's screenshots, which showed a pattern of escalation, casual messages turning suggestive. Emojis that crossed the line. The other women's stories added weight, their anonymity protecting them while their words built a case. I spent hours organizing the evidence, creating a timeline that showed Marcus's behavior wasn't a one-off but a calculated pattern, enabled by Pinnacle's toxic culture. I stored everything on an encrypted drive, backing it up twice, paranoid about losing it. The X account, Tech Truth Seeker, was my weapon. I'd never been much for social media, but I learned fast. Studying viral posts to understand what caught attention. I posted carefully, using a VPN to mask my location, avoiding anything that could be traced back to me. The first post was a blurred screenshot of Marcus's email, captioned, "Is this leadership?" #Tech Accountability. I tagged tech journalists I'd found on X, along with women's advocacy groups. The response was slow at first, but then it snowballed. Other employees, current and former, started sharing their stories in the thread. Some anonymous, others bold enough to use their real names. Sarah posted about her texts, her words careful but damning, her courage inspiring others. Hashtags like #PinnaclePredator took off, trending for 2 days straight. Pinnacle's PR team scrambled, issuing vague statements about workplace respect, but the internet was relentless, a tidal wave they couldn't outrun. The planning wasn't just about posting, it was about timing and amplification. I connected with Lena, a former Pinnacle colleague turned freelance journalist. Through a burner email, she'd left the company after clashing with Marcus over a project, her instincts sharp and her network deep. I fed her everything, screenshots, timelines, anonymized stories, while she dug into Marcus's past, uncovering whispers of similar behavior at his previous company. We strategized over encrypted messages, planning the perfect moment to strike. I spent hours drafting potential posts, refining the wording to maximize impact without crossing legal lines. I even practiced responses to hypothetical pushback, preparing for Pinnacle's inevitable spin. Pinnacle's annual gala in December, a glittering affair at a downtown hotel with chandeliers and champagne flutes, was the ideal stage. I'd been invited as a senior manager and went, dressed in a sharp black blazer that made me feel like a warrior, my heart pounding but my resolve unshakable. As Marcus delivered his keynote about innovation and integrity, Lena published her exposé online, a meticulously researched piece naming Marcus and linking to the X posts. Phones lit up across the ballroom, attendees reading in real time, their whispers turning into a hum of shock. Marcus's face went pale as he stepped off the stage, his usual swagger replaced by a hunted look. I stood in the crowd, sipping champagne, my heart racing with a mix of fear and triumph. The room's energy shifted, the illusion of his invincibility crumbling as the truth spread like wildfire. I caught Sarah's eye across the room, her nod a silent acknowledgement of our shared victory. The aftermath was chaos, but the good kind. Pinnacle's board couldn't ignore the public outcry. Investors, spooked by the scandal, pulled funding, and the stock price plummeted. Marcus was asked to step down within a week, his severance slashed by a furious board. His reputation, his true currency, was in tatters, his name a cautionary tale in tech circles. The women he'd targeted, Sarah, the ex-employees, me, had won, not just for ourselves but for anyone who'd come after us. Pinnacle announced a review of its HR policies, hiring an independent firm to investigate, a small victory but a start. Proof that our voices had mattered. I heard through Lena that several board members pushed for broader reforms, inspired by the courage of the women who'd spoken out. Ryan's fallout was quieter but no less satisfying. He moved in with his brother, his freelance gigs drying up as his focus faltered, his charm no longer enough to carry him. I heard through mutual friends that he'd tried to reach out to Claire, but she'd pushed him away, their affair crumbling under the weight of their guilt. Claire's blog lost sponsors as IRS scrutiny loomed, her perfect image cracking like cheap porcelain. Her followers turned on her, their comments filled with skepticism, her brand unraveling as quickly as it had grown. I didn't follow their lives closely, I didn't need to. The consequences spoke for themselves, their worlds unraveling as mine began to rebuild. By January 2025, I was settling into a new apartment, a cozy studio overlooking the Puget Sound's gray-blue waters. The view was my daily reminder that life could be beautiful again. Even after Betrayal, I'd taken a job at a smaller tech firm led by a female CEO who prioritized transparency and accountability, a stark contrast to Pinnacle's toxic culture. The work was challenging but fulfilling, each project a chance to rebuild my confidence. I started mentoring younger women in the industry, sharing my story in private meetups, helping them navigate the pitfalls I'd faced. Sarah and I stayed in touch, meeting for coffee near Pike Place, swapping stories about our new lives. She was thriving, her confidence growing without Marcus's shadow, her laughter brighter than I'd ever heard. We'd become more than colleagues, friends, bound by the battle we'd fought together. I also found new connections, small but meaningful. A coworker, Maya, invited me to a book club, where I rediscovered my love for literature, the pages of novels offering solace and escape. A neighbor, an older woman named Ruth, shared stories of her own resilience over cups of tea, her wisdom grounding me. These relationships, tentative at first, reminded me that trust could be rebuilt, one small step at a time. I started running again, my feet pounding the paths along the Sound, each step a reclaiming of my strength. I even took up painting, not Ryan's sketches but my own, bold strokes of color that felt like a new language for my emotions. The pain of betrayal never fully leaves, like a scar that aches in the rain. Some nights, I'd sit on my new balcony, the fairy lights replaced by a single lantern, and feel the echo of Ryan's laughter or Claire's hugs. I'd let myself feel it, then let it go, the journal by my side a testament to my growth. I'd learned to trust my own strength, to see through the lies people tell themselves and others. I'd taken back my life, not with revenge for its own sake, but with a purpose, to hold people accountable, to protect myself and others from those who wield power without conscience. The moral of my story is simple but hard-won: trust is fragile. But your worth is not. When those you love or work for betray you, it's not a reflection of your value. It's a challenge to rise, to reclaim your voice, and to build a life that's yours alone. I learned to guard my heart, not by closing it off, but by trusting myself first. I learned that resilience is a choice, forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by courage. And I learned that justice, when done right, isn't about destruction, it's about truth, about shining a light so bright that no one can hide from it. That's the victory I carry, one no one can take away, a beacon for the Amber I've become, flawed, fierce, and free.